with her husband and 2 daughters, who inspired her to write this debut novel. Clearly, your education was important to you, and you had all kinds of experiences with different types of schools, the locations of your schools, and I'm sure that inspired this somewhat too. But and so I want to hear more about that. But and I want to also say that there are a lot of people on this call who have already read the book. We have a champion bookseller named Anne, who has just done a phenomenal job of sharing this book with people, and we're so happy to be able to open it up to the world. And so yeah, we'll get started.
Great.
So what if you just tell us a little bit about the book and your daughters and how they inspired it?
Sure. So the book, The Girl with the Louding Voice, is a story of a 14-year-old girl called Adoni who wants nothing more than to be educated. Now, when her mother, who has always advocated for her education, dies, Adoni has to overcome a lot of obstacles, including getting married at such a young age and becoming a housemaid for a wealthy family in Lagos. But she doesn't give up on her dreams. Her spirit is never broken. She continues to pursue that dream of getting an education. So the story is her journey through trying to achieve that dream. And so the book was inspired in part by my 2 daughters, but really by growing up in Lagos, in Nigeria, which is a city. I lived in a middle-class neighborhood, and it was very common where I was growing up to see families hiring young girls as maids. And so when I was growing up, I had a lot of questions that I sort of internalized. I did not ask those questions then, but what I noticed was that many of these girls were not very well treated. Now, when I then had my own daughter many years after, we got into this kind of an argument. I asked her to help with offloading the dishwasher in the kitchen, and she went on to a sort of a tantrum throwing session, which she still does anyway. And so I made a statement to her then. I said, do you know that young girls like you who are probably working for families like mine in Nigeria? And her sort of reaction was, what do you mean by that? Do they get paid? Can you pay me for what I do in this house? And so I sort of said to her, no, they don't get paid. Well, not all of them do get paid, and it's not a fun job like I have. It sometimes involves not going on holidays or not even eating proper food. It sometimes involves some abuse, right? I sort of broke it down to her level. But that night, it made me really think about what I'd seen growing up, about questions that I wanted to ask I never asked. And so I started to do some research trying to understand whether this was still happening. And I came across so many articles that informed me writing The Girl with the Loud Voice.
Mm-hmm. So Lagos was a place that, tell us about it.
So Lagos is a very interesting, bustling city. It reminds me of New York in a way, because it's of how busy it is. All the business, most of the businesses are there. It's very cosmopolitan, very trendy, could be very aggressive, has parts that are quite dirty as well, has parts that are quite clean. Most of the wealthy middle-class families live in Lagos and parts of Lagos. So it was quite an interesting city for me to grow up in. But Nigeria as a whole is quite large. There are a number of states, over 30 states in Nigeria. And I personally have not been to all the states. And so what you then find is a lot of the villages that are surrounding Lagos or on the outskirts of Nigeria tend to get labor, so domestic labor, from the neighboring villages who come to the city to work and look for means of employment and for economic reasons. So they sort of migrate in.
Mm-hmm. So is there a little section that you can read for us? And I didn't hold it up. I'll hold it up in a minute because I want to talk about the cover.
Okay, I will read a section that I read not too long ago.
Okay.
So this is a section from when Adoni is, so she's in sort of the library of the house where she's been made. So she's now in Lagos, she's in the library and she's discovering things. And so I'm just going to, I would try to read sort of a page and a half or so.
That's good.
This morning, I was wiping the window outside the kitchen when I hear Big Madam's car driving inside. Quick, I pick up my cleaning cloth, pass the side of the house, enter the library, and shut the door on myself. I draw a long breath, start to wipe the bookcase. I bring each of the books out one by one, open it and wipe it. As I am wiping it, I am trying to be reading the writings in the book. I cannot be doing loud reading because of Big Madam, but I'm talking inside of my breath. Many of the books is having big English. So I'm only reading the first 10 words or so before I am dropping it until I'm picking up the colons. It's a small but fat book like my mama's Bible, with white letters in yellow and blue color on every page. I open it and I see that it is having words and the meaning of the words next to it. I begin to turn the page. The book is putting words letter by letter, like ABC alphabet. Since I'm knowing the alphabet, I begin to look for words. First, I am turning to letter I to check the meaning of innocent, because the way Big Daddy was laughing that day is making me think the word is having another meaning than just a name. The Collins write this about innocent. Innocent, adjective, a person not guilty of a crime or offense. Noun, a pure, guileless, or naive person. Why is Big Daddy asking if I am pure? And how I can be pure after how Morufo was making me so dirty in the spirit and body when he drank his firecracker? The whole thinking back to that time is making me want to vomit. So I close the Collins and pick up the book of Nigerian facts. Why it have such a long name, this book? It's a tall one too, be like 3 books gummed together. The cover with a picture of a ball, shining and bright, and the map of the Nigeria inside the ball, the green, white, green color of the Nigerian flag inside the map. I put it down, check what fact is meaning in the Collins. Fact, a thing that is known or proved to be true. Is this book having the true answer to every question I'm having? I open the first page of it, peep it. It is full of dust. Give me a tickle in my throat, make me cough 2 times. It seems so full of whys, this book. Many pictures, many things making explanations for many things about the Nigeria and the whole wide world of it.
And the whole wide world. That was so great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The voice, okay, first I want to show the book because it's so beautiful. Did you have any input on this title, on this cover, or?
I'd love to say I did, but I didn't. It was all the credits to my publishers. They did a wonderful job of just coming up with it. A very quick, it was kind of 1.5 trials. They said to me, we all loved it. They tweaked maybe the font a little bit, and that was. So
it's
it was
so
really
beautiful. I mean, it kind of sparkles in the bookstore about everything else, So yeah, it's a wonderful book to hold in your hands. I want to read a sentence here, and I guess my question is this something that you thought about a long time before you put on the page, and did you realize how, it strikes me as being very hard and yet vulnerable at the same time. And the sentence, it's just in chapter 2, it's early on, but it also sort of indicates, what is this mind-blowing life that she has. And it says, my head been stoning my mind with many questions since this morning, questions that are not having answers. I just want you to reflect on that sentence. To me, I love that sentence. It stuck out to me as one of the brilliant sentences, many of them, but it stuck out to me for the hardness of the stone and her mind. Yeah. And that her head is different from her mind. So she's separating her body from what's going on in her head, and all the questions she has. Is that something that just came out, or did you think about it? And can you just reflect on the voice that you used to tell the story?
Yeah, I think that might have come from me thinking about some of the questions I had as a child, and especially because I think I grew up where, as much as I had a great relationship with my mother, who raised me for most of the part, there were a lot of questions that I wasn't encouraged to ask as a child, just as a culture. And many times, because I had a very inquisitive mind, so it felt like many of those thoughts were stoning my mind. It felt like an assault on my mind and sort of barraging my mind with questions that I couldn't answer them. And so I think when I got to write that, and it's funny because that came after I nearly finished the book. It was just an addition to expand the book a little bit. And so,
Interesting.
so you pull that out because it was, I literally finished the book and I was going through revisions with my agent. And she said, look, it would be nice to sort of, just not jump from event to event. Let's expand it a little bit. And so that came from there. And so I think that just came from me seeing my thoughts and my questions as physical stones that could cause harm on my soul, on my spirit, if I didn't get them out. And so I put myself in Aduni's shoes and sort of wrote that way. And I think it also came from me literally translating the Yoruba language in some parts, which is my mother tongue, and how we sort of express ourselves sometimes into English. So I think it was a mixture of both. Yeah, and obviously because Aduni as a character tends to separate her mind sometimes and from what she's physically going through, because that's how she gets through things. In many scenes in the book, she says, I'm sort of not here anymore. Things are happening around me. Like when she was with her husband, she wasn't physically in the room. She was out of she was physically there, but spiritually and mentally, she had to detach herself. I think maybe that's where that came from.
Mm-hmm. And then she's really encouraged by one of her sister wives, and
sister wife.
Yeah, and I think, and the sister wife concept, I mean, the fact that they're called sisters is a big deal, and it frames them as their own little community around this man. And it's it's in the Mormon community, it's in all communities where there are multiple wives, but and you have two daughters, and they're sisters, and how does I guess my question is, when their sister wives are the ones who save each other, really, and can you just just expand on that a little bit, that relationship, and how it affects her, and if that's a typical thing, do you think?
It was interesting actually writing that scene because Nigeria and the Yoruba culture, in fact some other cultures apart from Yoruba, where I'm from, polygamy is something that is not new. A lot of families do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I've always been quite fascinated by it, actually. I've always wondered how 2, 3 women, 4 women, 5 sometimes, 7 sometimes would depending on how wealthy the man is and how he can take care of them and his beliefs, how they sort of get along, and how that relationship sort of evolves and how it holds. Mm-hmm. And so when I was writing my book, I wanted to show the power in female friendships and mentorship and the togetherness of the possibility of how, even in a situation like that such a relationship can thrive, especially with 2 reasonably young. So the first wife is much older, and so she sort of taps Aduni right from the start, especially because she knew Aduni's mother. But the younger wife, who is, I believe, 5 years older than Aduni, she sees Aduni as her friend and as someone who she can encourage, like a sister, actually, not just a friend, a sister that she can encourage because she's been there. And so I wanted to try to explore that and see if it could work. And I think it did in this situation, in this story that I was telling. Although I've heard that not often do you see that many, co-wives, co-wives, sister wives sort of get along that well. But I wanted to explore the power of female friendship, of sisterhood, even if they are married to one man. Is it possible? And how can that evolve? Right.
And you would have to have them in that kind of intimate relationship. Absolutely. With each other, because there, is there a situation where you just go out and play with your friends next door? I mean, the situation of their existence is unique to us. I mean, it's a great, it happens, but it's also a great tool, and you've explored that so well. And so when you I want to talk about the title now. I love it. And it seems so timely now that everyone needs a voice, and this percolation of that's at a boiling point of Black Lives Matter and everyone needing a voice. And I love that louding voice. So talk about that.
Right. So that came from a conversation Adini had with her mother, where her mother tells her, so before her mother died, her mother was trying to explain to her the importance of having an education. And my mother had similar conversations with me, actually. And I sort of projected the story where my mother said to me that, look, in life, you could lose everything, but as long as you've got good health and you've got your life and you have your education, you can get everything back. And so what matters really is what's in your brain, and not your physical appearance, but what's inside of you, and what you've acquired with that, the good things you can do with that. And so I think I'd sort of transpose that into the story. So Aduni's mother tells her that an education would give her a voice. Now, Aduni is someone who literally has a loud voice. She would not shut up with everything. It puts her in trouble sometimes. But she also says to her mother that I just don't want to have a voice. I want to have a louding voice. I want to be able to speak and be heard, because she's being silenced. And even though she refuses to be silenced, she's constantly silenced. But apart from that, she wants to ensure that everyone around her is given a chance, because she's come from a society where women, young girls, are seen as a commodity and they are disposable. And so she wants to stop that. And she knows that the only way she can do that is to speak up by her actions, by her voice. And that's so critical right now, where we are, like you're saying, speaking out, ensuring that the next person has a chance, same chance as you have, if you can. And so Faduni is actually creating a legacy, is refusing to be silent, is fighting for the rights, not just for herself, but for the generation coming behind or after her.
Did you ever feel a time in your education or your experiences when you felt like you did not have a louding voice, like you needed one?
Yeah, interesting. I think that maybe when I had all those questions growing up and I didn't feel that I could ask them. So it's one thing to know that you can ask questions. It's another thing to actually ask the questions. And because I've always, and my second daughter is very, very inquisitive, like I am. She asks questions. She's always like, Mom, why? I did not grow up culturally, did not grow up in that kind of environment where you were seen as challenging adults when you ask questions on certain things. And so yes, maybe in that aspect. But as I grew into teenagehood and into becoming a woman, the relationship I have with my mom and the adults around me has changed, maybe because I've realized that I can speak and I can be heard and there's nothing to be afraid of. It was like that. And maybe that's why I turned to writing, actually, because it gave me an opportunity to express myself. And so I journal a lot as a child. I would write my thoughts, and when my mom would travel for work, I would write down really long letters for her when she got back, to tell her this is exactly what happened while you were away. It's interesting. So yeah, so maybe that's where the storytelling came from as well, that desire to constantly express myself and say things.
I bet your mother loved that.
Yes, she's shown me a few letters that are written over the years, and I can't believe just the things I used to say.
I love it, but she probably loved that so much. I mean, she still has them, obviously.
Still has them, yes.
Yeah. But Aduni loses her mother right off the bat. Right off the bat, she's gone.
Absolutely.
But mothers are key in young women's lives.
So critical. And I think for me, I sort of try to put myself in Aduni's shoes. I thought, okay, I couldn't have gotten this far without my mom. And so I had to have Aduni lose her mom for me to be able to get into that sense of loss. I kind of try to imagine how she would, as a young child, a young girl, married, whose father doesn't really invest in her education or her future. So for me to write that story properly, I had to imagine not having that figure in my life who has been she's been so powerful in helping me become who I am today. And so that's why I kind of let that happen to Aduni. But you'd see that through the story, her mother never really leaves her alone. She carries her throughout the entire journey. She converses with her and, imagines that her mother can hear her. And that's how she's able to get through some of the things she goes through.
Yeah. She has her memory of her.
Absolutely.
And her, that's an important thing for her. So what books do you think your daughters ought to read to be to or what do you recommend for the or what do they like to read? I mean, do you just
I mean, one is 5, and so she reads, I don't know, she reads some poetry, right?
yeah.
She watches cartoons and stuff.
Yes.
The other one who's 11, she loves David Walliams, who is a UK sort of writer. She loves Jacqueline Woodson as
Uh-huh.
well, and some other sort of YA kind of authors. She likes to read some of my books. She's really desperate to read The Girl with the Louding Voice. She picked it up the other day. Like, Mom, I need to read this.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so she's really looking to read that. But she really loves her David Walliams kind of books, and books that she loves, books that have sort of illustrations in them, interestingly,
Mhm.
because she loves to
Mhm.
draw. And
Uh-huh.
so loves to sort of use that to help for her to get inspiration for what she wants to draw and tell stories about, because she loves to write as well. So
Uh-huh.
those are her kind of books right now.
Yeah.
Will change.
Um, I have a couple questions here. And some comments. There's some people who have just loved your book and they've selected for their book club. So that's a good one. And
Thank
then
you.
there's one, are any of the characters or experiences drawn from your personal experience?
I think that maybe there's a little bit of me in Tia, the character that ends up helping Ajani a little bit, in the sense that, I mean, not that I'm sort of that heavy into sort of climate change. I do care about things like that, but I sort of saw myself in her in the way that she cares about people, but sometimes is not sure of how to channel that help. And so she's not sure for what to do with that, and so maybe there's a bit of me in that. With Big Madam, I think Big Madam is a combination of some of the women that I heard of and saw growing up, how they
Mhm.
sort of treated their maids, and how, as I did my research, found out that some of them, which is not an excuse for bad behavior, but some of them had some internal frustrations that they
Mhm.
meet out to the young girls that they hired. And so I sort of try to channel that into Big Madam's character. But I think the rest were all fictional, just
Yeah.
me having fun with my imagination, running wild.
Uh-huh. When you moved from Nigeria, you moved to London
Yeah.
to go to university.
Yeah,
What was
I was tricked into coming to the UK, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
And so how was that? What was that like? And how did you start your writing career? Like what led you to begin writing seriously a novel?
So like I said, I used to write journal as a child, and then I think I loved taking apart family albums and sort of putting speech bubbles above them and sort of destroying. I love destroying things with my words. And then when I came to the UK, I used to travel quite often for summer holidays. It's quite often common with sort of middle class Nigerian families, and middle to wealthy families. They would go away for summer. And so I'd come for summer to the UK and go back. And that happened over the course of my entire secondary school. And then when I started university at Lagos. I was studying French, which I was not understanding at all. And my mom saw she saw that I wasn't getting it, but I wasn't ready to quit that. And so she told me we're coming to the UK for summer. And I got here and it was a case of, going back. So I went through a whole whatever. So that process of realizing I wasn't going back, because I love living in Lagos. I love Nigeria, I still do. I think me having that feeling of I'm here, I'm actually going to be here to study law, led me to start writing into a blog. And so I started to talk about my experiences as an immigrant, the culture shock of living here, because it's so different when you go on holiday and you have spending money and you're breezing in and out and you're
Yes.
not tourist, but you're having fun. There are no thoughts of bills, and there's no thoughts of the fact that you're living in a different society. And so I started, talking about that in my blog, and that became quite popular many years ago. It's about 15 years ago now. It became so popular, it was being discussed on radio in Lagos, and I thought it was anonymous. So you can imagine my shock when my mom called me and said, "They're discussing you on radio. What are you doing?" I'm like, "What?" So that quickly died a death because I wasn't comfortable with being discussed on radio. I thought I was being anonymous, but I knew then that I had something that I loved to do, which was writing. And so I thought, okay, I can't have a blog right now. I want to be kind of private. So why don't I use characters, right? Why don't I channel this whole desire to write and storytelling into writing stories? So I started to write stories, and then I decided to do a master's in creative writing. I have a career in technology as well. So I work in pharmaceutical technology, but I thought I should do something with my writing because everyone loves my stories, well, the people that read my stories. And so I did my MA in creative writing, and that's where the Girl with the Loud Voice came from. So it was part of my thesis submission, which everyone in class loved. And my supervisor was like, Abby, you need to do something with this. I need to introduce you to an agent. You need to do something. I was like, no, I'm not ready. But then I put it into a competition called the Bath Novel Award, and it won that competition. And from there, everything was taken out of my hands. And I was like, okay, I've got to let go now. I think the world is ready to read my stories.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel you must have felt vulnerable about that because
I was not ready. Like the award, like that I entered for, the only reason why I went in for it was because it was anonymous. It was judged anonymously. So you'd
right.
enter in your manuscript, which is great for writers like me who are not sure what, so I thought no one is going to knock on my door. No one is going to say, you wrote this. And so when I was shortlisted, I began to get the feeling of this might become a book. Like you've gotten through so many hurdles. I think if 1,200 writers went in for this across the world, and I was in top 5. So I was like, this might become a book. And I think from that moment, I went into panic, proper panic mode. Up until the night before my book was released, I was saying to my husband, is it too late? Is it too late for the book? For me, my husband was like, a lot of people are going to kill you. So Abby, no, you've got to do this. So I still have those feelings of, is this really happening? Is this real?
Right.
So grateful for all the love that the book has received.
Well, it is real, and it is real, and it's really such a brilliant book. I mean, the story is, the arc, the story is one that's been told a lot. Somebody against all odds, but you make it so interesting and such an unusual and unique voice and her accomplishments, and it is real, and people do love it. So yeah. Are you working on anything now?
I'm trying to. It took me a while to actually get out of Aduni's voice, or to get her out of, I think I went through a grieving period where I actually felt so horrible, so sad that she had to go. And it took me a long time to write standard English properly, which is really weird. I was writing in Aduni's voice for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I think I've just come out of that now, and I'm trying to see what else, what else is out there. What else can I, in there actually, that I can bring out. So I'm exploring myself and enjoying the process right now of doing that.
Uh-huh. Do you think in English then?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah. So that voice, well, but I mean, sometimes when people are multilingual,
yeah, I find that I'm more articulate in English, actually. I pray in English, I think in English. But I speak Yoruba when I want to get a point across that I feel that English is not quite getting. And then, so it depends on who it is. If it's my mom, I would sort of switch. If I want to gossip with my mom about someone, and I need to I need sort of impersonate somebody, I would I'll switch to Yoruba if I have to do that, which is fun.
Yeah, that is fun. So you got to be a Read with Jenna pick, and what was that like?
Oh my gosh, incredible.
Jenna Bush. I hear she's just a really great and nice person.
She's such an amazing woman. I absolutely love her personality. She's so humble. She made me feel completely at ease with myself. So did Hoda as well. They were great. But I mean, up until the point where I was going into the studio, I was thinking, there's no way I can do this. I'm just going to faint. I'm just going to pass out on the stage. I'm not going to be able to talk or, say anything, because it was so surreal. And, I was looking at the pictures the other day. I was like, this really happened. This really did happen to me. So it was incredible. I'm so grateful for the opportunity as well to have had that.
Uh-huh. So what did you get to, and how, do you know what her selection process was, or she's probably just pitched a lot of books and she gets to choose the one she loves, right?
I think with this one, she told me she was actually on a flight to Vietnam when she read this book. And she was going to talk about girl education. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so she read this and she was like, how amazing is this to get this kind of book when I'm actually going to, to do some work on girl education. But I do not know what the process is like. I can imagine that it's quite rigorous. I can imagine just the amount of books, the number of books that she gets inundated with for selections, because I know it's very competitive, it's a very special slot, and it can really turn a book around. It can do that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I know that, and I've heard that she reads them. She reads all the books that she selects. She doesn't just pick one without reading them, which I really appreciate.
Right. I think her mom was a librarian, so I think she comes from, the women in that family read a lot. Mm-hmm. So that's great. I love that. So you came to New York to the studio, or you did it virtually? How did that work?
I came to New York. I was flown into New York and ate a lot of food. I love food, and got my makeup on done. It was so much fun. I really loved it.
Yeah, I know. So great. So your daughters, are they going to school soon? What's it like, this COVID thing? Is it affecting their ability to go to school? And how has it affected your life and your writing life and that kind of?
It's been incredible. I used to say before that I thought nothing could really weigh me down, but I think mentally it's been such a huge challenge. I've had really down moments, but I've had up moments when, I get opportunities for stuff like this, and, I get good feedback to my book. With the kids, I've had to homeschool them, which I absolutely detest doing, and I'm so crap at. The other day, my daughter was like, Mom, you're such a horrible teacher. I was like, I agree. I'm not even arguing with you. Just please get along with me, for our sanities. So yeah, it's really hard. They've both been home for the last 4 months. I'm hoping they can go back in September, but then we're so unsure right now. We don't know what's going on. And because there's a huge gap between their ages, I've got an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like I said, so it's like I'm in a mindset of one who's trying to do year 7 maths, and I'm in the mindset of another who's trying to do some coloring. I'm like, I can't do this. I cannot do this thing. It's not meant for me. I want to be a writer. And so I think my writing has suffered as a result of that, because I've had to put them first. But I'm still trying to do what I can. And I never used to write at home. I never did that. I used to write in a coffee shop. I've had to force myself into writing at home and think of home as an office. And I never did that before. I loved being in a coffee shop and just listening to the chatter around me and using that as inspiration, as a sounding board for my stories. So losing all of that has been tough, but I've adjusted, I guess. I've had to. We all have had to.
Right. We hosted an author who lives in Ireland, and her husband was home and her kids were home, and she was trying to write. So she said she went out to the car.
I know. I've thought of doing that. I've actually thought of doing that, but my kids will find me in the car. They would come knocking. Come on, Mom.
So let me see if we have some more questions. Okay, there's another book club out there that's reading the book and really looking forward to talking about the book. And there's a great book discussion guide that is on your website or somewhere that I looked over too. Have you talked to many book clubs?
Quite a few, yes. Especially because of the situation right now. I get invites all the time. So I have spoken to quite a number of them. It's been interesting because it means that I've been able to speak to people in places that I probably would not have visited, for instance. I've been in a lot of book clubs from Lagos, from Nigeria, and that was fun.
I bet.
I got grilled quite a lot on that. And across the world, actually. So it's been great having that opportunity to do that. So I've had quite a few.
Oh, great. And have you gotten any question that just stuck out to you from a book club that just came out of, that surprised you, or?
Let me
No.
think. I don't think so. No, I think it's really more of, I've had questions from a lot of Nigerian book club about the writing style,
Uh-huh.
um, about why I chose that voice for Aduni, and just sort of hearing between themselves. At a point, I just kept quiet, and the book club members were sort of talking between themselves. But yeah, this made sense. But this, yeah, maybe not. So I was like, interesting to hear them. I've also heard, yeah, no, it was quite interesting. I sat there thinking, am I the author here, or you guys? But that's fun, because you're allowed to
Uh-huh.
just chill and just
Yeah,
watch,
just talk
what.
amongst yourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just calm it down.
I'm
Hurry
just
up.
here. Yeah.
And then I got into another one, which was very interesting. Again, another Nigerian one, but it was really talking about what we could do to change things. And that was
Oh,
really important for me, because it meant that the people that understand this story, in the sense that they've lived these lives, they are, some of them are the tias and are the big madams. It was really talking amongst a group of women, about 60 women or so. And it was just,
uh-huh.
what can we do? What are you doing with your maids? Do you have a maid? Those kind of questions. And I observed that. But it was interesting to just see that exchange, and to have people say, Abby, I'm really thinking about this now. I haven't thought about it. Things like, when is your maid's birthday? Do you know what your maid's surname is? Do you know what her favorite color is? And
Uh-huh.
having seen those women dialogue between themselves was very interesting for me. That I had never seen that in any book club, and I think it was because of the unique fact that these were Nigerian women who understand this story, in the sense that they've lived these experiences and seen it growing up as well. So that was different.
And I bet just so validating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Very long
great.
thank yous, Abby. Thank you for doing this. And somebody else, a lot of them said, look, I have my louding voice from this. It's not writing a book, but it's setting up a charity. I am going to set up a charity, and I'm going to make sure domestic workers go to school. And just hearing all these things and thinking, yes, this is amazing. That's the power in stories like
Yeah.
this. It's great.
Could you have imagined that happening?
No, no
Yeah.
way. No,
Yeah.
it's been unreal.
So I have a question. Somebody wants to know what the books are behind you.
Oh, wow. So, gosh, this is Elif Sharak's 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this strange world, which is beautiful writing. This is Hoda's I Really Needed This Today, which is a sort of inspirational quotes. And
Uh-huh.
then there's Jasmine Ward Sing on Buried Sing, which is brilliant.
Oh my gosh, I love that book.
Yeah, and I've got Nicholas Sparks' The Notebook.
Okay.
Great. And then the remaining 4 on this side are all books about writing. So it's one that says no plot, no problem. I wish. And there's one that's the emotional craft of fiction, which I sort of love to write. And as you know, I love emotional, sort of understanding the emotional chart of my characters. I am reading that. And then the rest are really Jodi Picoult's Small Great Things,
Uh-huh.
Lily King's Writers and Lovers, Jane Harper's The Dry, and Khalid Hosseini's And the Mountains Echoed. So all beautiful books that I love.
Yeah, they are. They are. And they're so different. I mean, you
I
paint
do.
a broad, yeah, I love that. I love that because you need certain books for certain times. So,
Really.
and then so that you just told us what you've been reading. Yeah. So let me see if I have some more questions. Yeah. So is there anything else you want to just tell us about the book, or you've kind of told us what people have taken away from it, which is amazing. And what would you like to see this book do for people like Aduni?
Oh, wow. I think that, so maybe if I start with, because generally one thing that is across the book that is not unique to Nigeria is really the theme of kindness, which I tried to show from the start of the book. It seems Aduni's journey is really one that has been paved by people that were kind to her mother, or that because her mother was kind to somebody, and then she got the kindness as payback, and then she sort of extended that, and she did that in Big Madam's house. So I try to say to people that, that kindness really doesn't cost much, apart from just extending it. And so, I'd love for that to carry on. But also for girls like Aduni, it's really just understanding that these girls that we come across, and it's not just within Nigeria. I mean, child labor is a global problem. I was reading the other day that in the UK, there's about 7,000 phone calls to the domestic child labor line every day, 7,000
Wow.
calls. Yes, so it is a huge global problem, especially for the girl child. And so it's really ensuring that we see young girls like Aduni as intelligent, beautiful humans that have a dream and a goal and who did not choose this life. I think one thing I kept saying to myself is that no one chooses to the family that we're born into. You just find yourself there. You know, I would say if I could, I would have probably been Oprah's daughter or something, or I'd have gone somewhere, somewhere. I mean, I love my mom if she's watching this, but it's just one of those things where no one chooses where they're born into. And if someone's born into poverty, it wasn't because they wanted that for them. And so it's understanding that and realizing that in every single individual is a gift and a talent and a brilliance and a mind that needs to be nurtured. And education it's a human right, and every single child, boy or girl, should be given that right. And so I'm saying to countries, to individuals, let's make that happen however we can. And I've done my bit, which is tell stories, but I'm hoping that people who can do more than I can in different ways should do what they can to make lives better for these children, not just the girls, but especially the girls.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm just sort of tearing up.
Thank you.
One thing this COVID has really done is expose a lot of the disparity between, people who can cope with, that people who have means and can educate their children, even if they can't stand doing it. And, and then people who just don't have access, and it's heartbreaking. And now is a real good time, I think, for people to rise to the occasion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
and we can make a difference, no matter how tiny, no matter how little you think your contribution is, it can make a difference in a life.
Yeah. Well, Abi, thank you so much for joining us here. We really love your book, and it's been a delightful time talking to you and hearing you. So thank you for the book.
Thank you.
Like yours, I mean, they make book clubs more interesting. They make the life of a bookseller really easy, because it's just, you can't fail if you put this in someone's hands. And I just want to remind everybody that if you haven't purchased this book, you can do so at Watermark Books. And it's been a rough time for people whose book came out this year. And we just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get this book. It will extend your appreciation of this event. And we just thank you for the support. So thank you, Abi.
Thank you so much for having me. And, it's been you guys are the reason why I have hope that, look, it's not all going to go to waste. People are going to keep reading my book because they're passionate booksellers like you who are helping us. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining. And I'm so sorry I joined late again. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.